What's going on, everyone? So once again, the New Orleans Pelicans win, and they're on a 7-game winning streak, and a lot of this has been without Brandon Ingram, who is one of their best players. I think Zion's their best player, but next to Zion, I think Brandon Ingram is right there, number 2. I think he is the guy, and they're still winning. They're number 1 in the Western Conference. They look great. They're playing great basketball. Zion is playing like an absolute monster, and this team might be for real. Now, personally, I don't necessarily put them as a contender. I think they need some experience. I think playoff basketball and regular season basketball are two different things, but it wouldn't shock me, right? The West is so wide open right now. It is insane. And I really wouldn't be surprised if the Pelicans ended up, walking out and ended up having to face, very likely Boston or Milwaukee in the NBA Finals. Personally, I think that they need the experience. I think once they get to the playoffs, you're going to see probably a little clunkiness, a little, awkwardness, as you see with most young teams, right? But this is a team that I think they kind of remind me of like OKC, many moons ago now, with Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden, right? You had like the 3 young stars who were kind of coming into their own, and every year you saw them progress better and better until they made it to the NBA Finals. And then they ended up making the mistake of trading James Harden, where I think if they didn't, they very likely would have won a championship. That's kind of how I see the New Orleans Pelicans, is I think that they're, they were playing team, they end up making the playoffs, and now they're very likely going to be, one of the better teams in the West. They probably win the first round. They get to the second round. They're going to have that tough, probably veteran matchup. And I think that they, have a hard fought like 6 or 7 games and end up losing. Or maybe they're like the Mavs where they sneak into the Western Conference and then they have a hard fought matchup and then I think they'll ultimately lose. But I don't think there's not a single team in the Western Conference that I look at and go, man, the Pelicans have no way of beating them, right? I think they could beat the Suns. I think they could beat Denver, right? And those are like the 2 teams that I think have the most likely chance of coming out the West. And I think the Pelicans are right there. I really do. I think that they're not too far away. I just think that Denver and Phoenix's experience is really going to be a problem. And then, of course, the Warriors, right? The Warriors don't look great right now, but playoff Warriors, they have the experience. It's one of the reasons I thought they would beat the Boston Celtics. I think that very likely is the case. If New Orleans ends up matching up against the Warriors, the Suns, or Denver, I really think that one of those 3 teams can beat the Pelicans. That's just me personally. Now, I, again, would not be surprised at all. They have more than enough talent, but experience goes a long way in playoff basketball, especially, right? And then Zion. I mean, Zion has been an absolute monster. He's playing like one of the best players on the planet. This guy is insanely unstoppable, right? He's just got the athleticism, the strength, the size, all of that. But how do teams hone in on him in the playoffs, right? How do teams try to close him out and try to neutralize him? And the good thing is with the Pelicans, and the reason that it seems to work so well is they all have the pecking order, right? Zion seems to be the number 1 guy. Brandon Ingram's 2, or 1A, 1B. And then CJ McCollum's kind of been hey, I'll be the guy to make the sacrifice. I will be, the 3rd option, but I can go get you 20 if you need me to, but I don't have to, right? I can go get 15, 5 and 5 and help us win as long as we win. And that is huge for this Pelicans team, to have a guy like CJ McCollum. Also, I think CJ McCollum's experience is hugely beneficial, right? Because he's a guy that's been to a Western Conference Finals, right? He's a guy that has been, the number 2 option and a big scorer and having 30-point, playoff games and stuff like that. So I think he's a guy that I wouldn't be shocked to see step up come the playoffs, right? Where, Brandon Ingram, Zion, they don't really have necessarily the experience. But also the Pelicans, they have an insane potential, right? Because the Lakers have been awful, and the Lakers are definitely picking it up now, right? They've kind of turned the corner and kind of gotten better, but they still are just far and away. The Pelicans could realistically land, a top maybe 5, top 10 pick at the worst, and if that's the case, you could do multiple things with that. You could draft another young guy to build with your core, or you could use that to maybe go get another piece, like a piece to put you over the top and win a championship, right? Like maybe go get like that solid mid-tier guy, somebody that could come in and be that guy. Maybe you go and try to get like work out like a sign and trade or something for like a Miles Turner. A big that could block shots, spread the floor rather than Valanciunas, right? Just a name I'm throwing out there. I'm not saying that they'll necessarily do that, but realistically, the Pelicans, I think they're there. I think they're a top 4 or 5 team in the Western Conference, like legitimately. I don't really put too much into number 1 seeds, right? And I made a video a long time ago, like before the season began, where I said, like, the Pelicans, these young teams, Memphis, guys like that, those teams are usually the teams that have like a top 3 record just because they're young. They're going at full speed. They're going 100%. They're usually healthier than some of the veteran-led teams, all of that stuff, right? So they're usually the teams that have the higher seeding, win more of the games, assuming that they're talented, right? If you still got to be talented. But yeah, a good young team usually is a top 3 to 5 team. You see it every year. You see that one young team that is just, they're winning a bunch of games and they're in the top of the standings because, again, they're usually healthier. They're going 100 miles an hour every single game. Where some of the veteran teams, they not that they take nights off, but they understand like it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? So they're kind of pacing themselves throughout. Like, okay, yeah, we're down 20. Let's not kill ourselves to get back into the game. Like, let's try to make it interesting. But let's rest Chris Paul tonight. Stuff like that. That's just what happens. That's how it works. But the Pelicans, I think, are just in an excellent position. They got the young star talent and Brandon Ingram and Zion. They got the veteran leader and CJ McCollum. They got nice role players, nice compliments. This is a team that could be a problem for a while. It's just health, right? Brandon Ingram hasn't been the healthiest player. Zion definitely hasn't been the healthiest player. But if those two can be healthy and they can get into the playoffs, they can make some noise. This is a team that I don't think anyone is like excited to play. Like, I don't think anyone come playoff time is going to be like, oh, yes, we get to play the Pelicans, right? Like, I think it's more of like, man, like how do we stop Zion? If we stop Zion, does Brandon Ingram have a good night? If we stop Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, he could go off for 30 and at any given night. He's a proven scorer in this league. Like, they got nice role guys. They got guys hit shots. This team, worst case, is going to be a very hard out. Very hard out. I think if they're healthy, I think this is a team that it's going to be at least a hard-fought 6, maybe 7 games to take out the Pelicans. But I think they need a little more experience. And who knows? Again, maybe they do. Maybe they do make it. But I think you saw it with Memphis last year, saw it with Dallas last year. That you gotta the lack of experience, the lack of like the moments is something that usually takes time to get over that hurdle. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. What do you think? Are the Pelicans a contender? Do you think the Pelicans are for real? This is a team that can win an NBA championship? Do you think they still got a little ways to go? Whatever your thoughts are, however you feel, good, bad, ugly, somewhere in between, let me know down in the comment section below.